The Council of 12 convened under the Vault of Stars, a colossal chamber carved into the heart of Zarthos Prime. The ceiling shimmered with galaxies, a holographic map of the universe that pulsed in rhythm with the Council's deliberations. 12 figures, each representing a different species, loomed over the chamber floor, their expressions inscrutable. The trial was about to begin. At the center of the chamber stood a dais, encased in a shimmering energy field. It was there that Alara, the accused human, was brought forward. Her wrists were bound with plasma cuffs that hissed and sparked whenever she struggled. Her once pristine flight suit was torn and stained, and a deep gash on her temple had dried to a dark crimson. Her captors, reptilian creatures known as the Kritith, shoved her roughly into place before retreating to the shadows. "Let the record show," announced High Arbiter Zalthorax, his gelatinous form quivering under the weight of his ceremonial robes, "that the accused stands before this council charged with espionage, incitement to rebellion, and violation of interstellar law." Alara lifted her head, her green eyes blazing with defiance despite her battered state. "Espionage? Incitement? All I did was stumble across your dirty little secrets while trying to get home." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A towering insectoid, Counselor Vistran, clicked its mandibles. "Humans have always been meddlesome. Their kind's curiosity borders on recklessness." Alara's lips curled into a bitter smile. "Curiosity is the only reason humanity survived long enough to meet the likes of you." "Enough!" Zalthorax's voice boomed, silencing the room. His translucent body glowed faintly, a signal of his rising anger. "You will answer for your crimes. The Council does not tolerate insolence." Alara clenched her fists. "And I don't tolerate being accused of things I didn't do. You call me a criminal, but what about the secret labs on Europa? Or the slave mining operations on Kepler 22b? You think humans are reckless? Take a good look at yourselves." Gasps and outraged exclamations erupted from the counselors. Alara's words had struck a nerve. The truth hung in the air like a storm cloud. "Silence her," growled a gruff voice. It came from Counselor Barkhan, a hulking creature with metallic skin and eyes like molten lava. "Her insolence insults this chamber." Zalthorax raised a gelatinous appendage to restore order. "The accused has already been judged. The punishment shall proceed." 2 Kritith guards stepped forward, dragging an ancient device onto the dais. It was a monstrous contraption, all jagged edges and glowing runes, its purpose unmistakably sinister. Alara's defiance faltered for the first time as she was strapped into the device, her arms and legs locked into place. "This is a mistake," she said, her voice trembling despite her resolve. "You don't know what you're doing." Zalthorax leaned forward, his body rippling. "We know precisely what we are doing. Let this serve as a lesson to all who dare defy the Council." The device hummed to life. Tendrils of energy snaked out, latching onto Alara's body. Pain seared through her, a white-hot agony that made her muscles spasm uncontrollably. She bit down hard, refusing to scream, but the counselors could see the torment in her eyes. The chamber grew quiet as Alara's torment unfolded. Some council members averted their eyes, uncomfortable with the spectacle. Others watched with cold detachment. For 43 harrowing minutes, her cries echoed through the Vault of Stars, growing weaker and weaker until they ceased altogether. At last, her head lolled to one side. Her breathing stopped, and her body went still. Zalthorax gestured to the guards. "Remove her remains. Let her death be a warning to all." The guards stepped forward to comply, but none of them noticed the faint, flickering glow that began to emanate from Alara's chest. Not yet. The Vault of Stars fell into an eerie silence as Alara's lifeless body hung limply in the restraints of the ancient device. The energy tendrils dissipated, retreating back into the machine, which fell silent with an ominous hiss. The room, once buzzing with cold deliberation and fiery accusation, now felt heavy, suffused with the weight of what had just transpired. Counselor Vistrin clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. Humans are resilient creatures, it murmured, its compound eyes reflecting the holographic starlight above. To endure for so long under such torment is noteworthy. Barkhan snorted, his metallic voice echoing through the chamber. Resilient or stubborn, it matters not. She was a pest, and pests are dealt with. Her suffering will serve as an example to others who think to challenge our rule. Other counselors nodded in grim agreement, but a few shifted uneasily. Counselor Aranea, a lithe, ethereal being from the water world of Serene, floated forward, her translucent form shimmering like liquid crystal. Was this truly necessary? Aranea's voice was like a flowing stream, soft yet piercing. She was young, unarmed, and alone. What threat did she truly pose to the council? Enough of your sentimental drivel, snapped Zalthorax, who presided over the proceedings. His gelatinous form pulsed with irritation. This is not the time for moralizing. The law was clear, the judgment passed. She is dead. Let us move forward. As if to punctuate his words, the guards approached the device to release Alara's body. One of them, a hulking Critith with scarred scales, unlocked the restraints. Alara's limp form collapsed onto the dais with a dull thud. Her face, pale and serene in death, looked almost peaceful, a stark contrast to the pain she had endured. The guards began to drag her body away when a faint ripple passed through the chamber. It was so subtle at first that many dismissed it as a trick of the holographic starlight above. But then it happened again, stronger this time, a low-frequency hum that seemed to vibrate through the very fabric of the air. Counselor Aranea tilted her head, her translucent form flickering. What is that? The hum grew louder, a rhythmic pulse that resonated through the chamber. The holographic galaxies above flickered, as though responding to some unseen force. The guards stopped, glancing at each other uneasily as Alara's body began to emit a faint, golden glow. Impossible, hissed Vistrin, its mandibles clicking rapidly. She is dead. The life force has departed. This is no more than residual energy. But the glow intensified, spreading outward from Alara's chest in radiant waves. Her fingers twitched, then her hands. Her chest heaved, and with a sudden, sharp gasp, she drew a deep, shuddering breath. The chamber erupted in chaos. Counselors rose from their seats, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of disbelief and alarm. The guards stumbled back, their reptilian eyes wide with terror. Alara's eyes fluttered open, and when they did, they were no longer the vibrant green of a human's. They burned with an otherworldly gold, shimmering like molten metal. Zalthorax, for the first time in his long tenure as High Arbiter, faltered. His gelatinous form quivered uncontrollably. This is not possible. She was dead. Alara pushed herself up onto her knees, her movements fluid and deliberate. The gash on her temple sealed itself before the council's horrified eyes, the bruises fading from her skin as though erased by some invisible hand. She looked up, her golden gaze sweeping across the room, taking in the stunned faces of her captors. You killed me, she said, her voice low but steady, reverberating with a power that was not her own. You thought it was over. Barkhan stepped forward, his massive frame casting a long shadow. What manner of trickery is this, human? Speak, or I shall dash. You'll do nothing, Alara interrupted, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. She stood, her movements graceful and deliberate. You don't understand what you've unleashed. But you will. The golden glow around her flared brighter, and the hum in the chamber grew deafening. The ancient device that had taken her life began to tremble violently, its runes sparking and burning out. One by one, the holographic galaxies above winked out of existence, plunging the room into darkness save for the light emanating from Alara. You wanted a warning, she said, her gaze locking onto Zalthorax. Let me give you one. Your council is corrupt. Your crimes against humanity and countless others will not go unanswered. With a burst of energy, the golden light surged outward, knocking the guards to the ground and sending shockwaves through the chamber. The counselors clung to their platforms as chaos erupted around them. When the light faded, Alara stood at the center of the dais, her eyes still glowing, her expression calm yet unyielding. "You've underestimated humanity," she said softly, almost to herself. "And now, it's your turn to answer for that mistake." In the stunned silence that followed, no one dared to move. Alara turned slowly, her gaze sweeping over the counselors who had ordered her death. "Let the record show," she said, her voice echoing ominously in the chamber, "that you killed me once. It won't happen again." The vault of stars was plunged into stunned silence. The golden light that had burst from Alara now radiated faintly around her, casting her in an ethereal glow. Her figure was no longer that of a battered prisoner. She stood tall, her once tattered flight suit pristine, her movements imbued with an unearthly grace. The counselors stared at her, their expressions a mix of fear, disbelief, and curiosity. Zalthorax's gelatinous form quivered violently, his voice sharp and demanding as he broke the silence. "What are you? Speak, human or whatever you have become." Alara turned her glowing eyes toward him. "I'm as human as I was when you strapped me to that device. But something else woke inside me when you killed me." Counselor Vistrin, recovering from its shock, clattered its mandibles in disbelief. "Woke? What nonsense is this? You were dead. No being survives the device of reckoning. Its energy destroys all life force. Explain yourself." Alara tilted her head, her golden gaze steady. "The device didn't just take, it gave. Its energy didn't kill me, it activated something within me. Something that was always there, waiting." The room was tense with confusion. Arania, the serene counselor, floated closer, her liquid form rippling with curiosity. "This something, what do you mean? Is it human technology? A mutation?" Alara hesitated, her expression momentarily conflicted, as though searching for the right words. "No, it's not human. I think I've always been different. Even before this. My parents worked on classified projects for Earth's interstellar division. They told me once that I was special, but I didn't understand what they meant." Barkhan's deep, gravelly voice cut through her explanation. "Lies. Deception. This is some trick of human technology, a desperate ploy to infiltrate the council." Alara's voice turned icy. "You think this is a ploy? You killed me. I have nothing left to lose." The energy around her surged momentarily, and the ancient device crackled ominously behind her, its runes flickering to life again. The chamber trembled slightly, drawing gasps from the counselors. Arania gestured to the device, her voice almost reverent. "The machine. It is bonded with her. The energy is resonating with her very being." Barkhan snarled. "She's dangerous. We must destroy her now before she can dash enough." Alara's voice echoed like a thunderclap, cutting through the chaos. The force of it seemed to shake the very air, and Barkhan stumbled back, his molten eyes wide. "You call me dangerous," she continued, her voice quieter but no less commanding. "But look at yourselves. You preside over this galaxy, deciding who lives and dies, enforcing your will without regard for justice or morality. And now that someone challenges you, you're afraid." Zalthorax recovered his composure, his gelatinous body rippling with defiance. "You speak of justice, but you are nothing more than an anomaly, a freak accident of fate. Do you think your newfound powers make you equal to this council?" Alara took a step forward, her glowing form radiating authority. "Equal? No. What I am now surpasses your council. I've seen the depths of your corruption, the secret prisons, the illegal experiments, the colonies you've destroyed to protect your power." The room buzzed with unease. Some counselors shifted uncomfortably, while others glared at her with unmasked hostility. Elara's gaze swept over them, taking in their reactions. "I'm not here to overthrow your council," she said. "But I am here to hold you accountable. The galaxy deserves better than tyrants who masquerade as its guardians." Aranea floated closer, her voice calm but wary. "And what would you propose, Elara? That the council dismantle itself? That chaos reign in its place?" Elara turned to her, her golden eyes softening slightly. "No. I propose reform. Transparency. A true representation of the galaxies under your rule. And for those who resist justice." Barkhan bared his metallic teeth. "Justice? And who will judge us? You?" Elara smiled faintly, a dangerous glint in her glowing eyes. "No. The people you've wronged will." Zalthorax slammed an appendage against his platform, his voice booming. "Enough of this madness. Guards, seize her." The Kritith guards hesitated, their eyes flicking nervously between Zalthorax and the glowing figure of Elara. She turned her gaze on them, and the air seemed to hum with power. "Do you really want to try?" she asked softly. The guards exchanged uncertain glances, then slowly backed away. Zalthorax quivered with fury. "Cowards! She is one girl dash." "One girl who survived death," interrupted Aranea, her tone thoughtful. "Perhaps it is time we listened, Zalthorax. The galaxy is watching, and we cannot ignore the truth forever." The council chamber fell silent again, the tension thick in the air. Elara stood at the center of it all, a glowing beacon of defiance and hope. She raised her chin, her voice steady and resolute. "You thought my death would be a warning," she said. "Let my return be one instead. Your reign of unchecked power is over. The galaxy deserves better, and I'm here to make sure it gets it." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Aranea nodded slowly, her form shimmering. "Perhaps she is right. Perhaps it is time for change." Others murmured in tentative agreement, but Zalthorax and Barkhan glared at her, their fury barely contained. The battle lines had been drawn, and the council chamber, once a place of unchallenged authority, had become a crucible of rebellion. Elara stood at the center, unyielding, her golden eyes fixed on the uncertain future ahead. The Vault of Stars had never been so divided. The air thrummed with tension as counselors whispered among themselves, their voices carrying a mixture of curiosity, fear, and disbelief. Elara stood tall at the center of the dais, her glowing eyes scanning the chamber. She knew she had their attention, but she also knew she had to make her next move carefully. Aranea, the serene counselor, floated closer to the dais. Her translucent form glimmered in the dim light, her tone both cautious and curious. "You've spoken of secrets and crimes, Elara. If you truly aim to hold this council accountable, you must provide proof. Wild accusations will not suffice." Elara nodded, her glowing gaze locking with Aranea's. "Proof is exactly what I bring. Secrets you thought were buried. Crimes you thought erased." With a wave of her hand, the golden light around her flared. In the air above her, holographic images began to materialize, detailed schematics, intercepted communications, and recordings of atrocities committed under the Council's orders. The Council chamber gasped collectively as the holograms shifted, one damning image after another playing out for all to see. A recording of a desolate mining colony on Kepler 22b flickered to life, showing enslaved workers, humans and aliens alike, being forced to labor under brutal conditions. Another image displayed secret labs on Europa, where horrific experiments were conducted on living beings. Whispers turned to shouts as the evidence piled higher, the Council's sins laid bare for all to witness. "Enough!" Zalthorax's voice quaked with fury and desperation. His gelatinous form pulsed erratically as he pointed a quivering appendage at Elara. "These images are fabrications. Lies meant to destabilize this council." "Fabrications?" Elara's voice was sharp, cutting through the noise. Shall I call forth the victims to testify? The ones who survived your labor camps and experiments? Shall we open the records your own operatives leaked to me before you silenced them? Aranea turned to Zalthorax, her liquid form rippling with unease. The images. They align with whispers we've heard for decades. Denials will no longer suffice, Zalthorax. The galaxy demands answers. Barkhan growled, his metallic frame bristling with hostility. Answers? She is a single human, a lone anomaly. She does not represent the galaxy. This council is the only force capable of maintaining order. Order? Elara laughed bitterly. Is that what you call enslaving colonies, exploiting resources, and silencing dissent? This isn't order, it's tyranny dressed up as governance. The holograms flickered again, this time showing communication logs between high-ranking council members. Conversations about profits, resource hoarding, and plans to suppress rebellions played out in stark detail. Counselors who had remained silent now shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their guilt palpable. You've built your empire on the backs of the innocent, Elara continued. But your lies can't shield you anymore. The galaxy sees you now for what you truly are. Aranea's voice was quieter now, her tone filled with regret. And what do you propose, Elara? If the council falls, chaos will follow. There are no systems in place to replace us. Elara stepped forward, her presence commanding. I don't seek to destroy the council. But it must change. The power you've hoarded for yourselves must be shared. Every species deserves representation, transparency, and the chance to hold you accountable. Naive. Zalthorax spat. The galaxy is too vast, too unruly for such idealism. You will lead us to anarchy. Perhaps it is you who fears losing control, Aranea countered, her tone sharp. Perhaps the galaxy will thrive without your iron grip. Barkhan slammed his massive fist onto his platform. Enough of this. She is an abomination, and her influence must end now. As Barkhan lunged toward the dais, Elara raised her hand, and the golden energy around her surged. The force sent him staggering back, his molten eyes wide with shock. You've killed me once, she said coldly. You won't succeed again. The chamber trembled as the energy radiating from Elara intensified. Around the dais, the ancient device that had claimed her life sparked and shuddered, its runes flickering with renewed power. Elara closed her eyes briefly, her expression one of concentration. When she opened them, her voice rang out, steady and unyielding. This council's time of unchecked rule is over. From this day forward, you will be watched, held accountable for every decision, every law, every act. And if you resist, if you cling to your old ways, the galaxy will rise against you. I will rise against you. The chamber erupted into chaos. Some counselors shouted in anger, others in fear. But amid the noise, a few voices rose in agreement. Aranea stepped forward, her form shimmering with determination. I support her, Aranea said firmly. If we truly wish to serve the galaxy, we must change. Others began to murmur in reluctant agreement. Zalthorax quivered with rage, his voice trembling. This is treason. You would dismantle everything we've built. No, Aranea said, turning to him. We would rebuild it, stronger and fairer than before. Elara watched as the room fractured, alliances shifting, fear giving way to hope. She knew the battle was far from over. The council's resistance would not crumble easily, and there were still powerful forces working to maintain the status quo. But for the first time, the galaxy had seen the truth. And for Elara, that was the first step toward justice. The aftermath of Elara's revelation rippled through the galaxy like a shockwave. The once unshakable authority of the Intergalactic Council crumbled under the weight of its exposed corruption. On Zarthos Prime, the Vault of Stars transformed from a chamber of oppression into a crucible of change. The council chamber, once dominated by the looming figures of the 12, now buzzed with voices from across the galaxy. Representatives from every species, colony, and territory had been summoned to debate the future. The grand room no longer reflected the cold detachment of its rulers, but pulsed with the vibrant energy of hope and defiance. Elara stood at the heart of it all, her golden aura subdued but still visible, a reminder of the extraordinary events that had set this revolution in motion. She addressed the gathered representatives, her voice carrying the weight of everything she had endured. "We stand at the edge of a new era," she began, her words met with attentive silence. "The galaxy has suffered under the weight of tyranny disguised as governance. But today, we have a chance to rebuild. To create a system that values justice, representation, and unity over greed and fear." Arania floated beside her, a symbol of solidarity. The Serene Counselor had become one of Elara's strongest allies, working tirelessly to rally support for reform. "No longer will decisions be made behind closed doors," Arania added. "No longer will the voices of the many be silenced by the power of the few." The debates that followed were fierce. Barkhan and his loyalists resisted every proposal for reform, their fear of losing control driving them to desperate measures. "You would tear apart the foundations of this galaxy," he roared during one heated session. "Chaos will reign if we dismantle this council." Elara countered with calm resolve. "The foundations were already cracked, Barkhan. What you call order was built on lies and suffering. Chaos isn't the enemy, fear of change is." Over the following weeks, a coalition of reform-minded counselors, representatives, and citizens formed. They drafted the Galactic Charter of Unity, a document that outlined the principles of the new governing body. Each species, no matter how small or isolated, would have a voice. Transparency would be mandatory, and a system of checks and balances would ensure accountability. The most contentious issue was the fate of the former counselors who had been complicit in the atrocities. Trials were held, broadcast across the galaxy. Some, like Zalthorax, defended their actions to the bitter end. Others, like Vistren, offered confessions, hoping for leniency. Barkhan, refusing to accept the new order, attempted to stage a coup. His forces stormed the Vault of Stars during a critical vote on the new charter. The battle that followed was fierce, but Elara, using the mysterious power awakened within her, led the charge against him. She moved like a force of nature, her golden energy shielding the innocent and disarming the attackers without unnecessary bloodshed. In the end, Barkhan was captured, his rebellion quashed. The coup attempt only solidified support for the new charter. The galaxy had seen enough of tyranny and violence. Months later, the newly formed Galactic Union of Allied Systems convened its first assembly. The Vault of Stars, now a symbol of rebirth, had been transformed into the Hall of Unity. The holographic galaxies above had been replaced by an ever-changing tapestry of the galaxy's countless worlds, a reminder of the diversity and interconnectedness of the cosmos. Elara stood on the dais, no longer a prisoner or a lone voice against the tide. She was now the Union's first ambassador of justice, a position created to ensure that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. Arania and others stood alongside her, their expressions filled with hope. "This isn't the end of the fight," Elara said in her inaugural address. "Rebuilding trust and healing the wounds of the past will take time. But today, we've taken the first step. We've proven that no matter how dark the past, the future is ours to shape. Together." Her words were met with thunderous applause, a sound that echoed across the galaxies. Broadcasts of the event reached every corner of the known universe, inspiring billions. As the assembly adjourned, Elara walked out onto the observation platform overlooking the vast expanse of Zarthos Prime. Arania joined her, their eyes meeting with mutual respect. "You've changed everything," Arania said. "We've changed everything," Elara corrected. "And we've only just begun." As the stars stretched out before them, Elara felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. She had died in this place, and yet, she had been reborn not just for herself, but for an entire galaxy. The light of a new dawn spread across the stars, and for the first time in centuries, hope burned brighter than fear.